Josh Allen, looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen. Deep downfield. Wide open.
Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. It is August 30th, cut edition, roster edition. We're here to break down the roster, what we think of all the moves from today. A busy last week, lots of news coming out around the league, maybe some players I might have my eye on, a practice squad, what that might look like, and we'll break down each and every position group. Mike, how you feeling today?
I'm doing great right now. I have a vacation starting tonight. Going to see some great football this weekend. Ohio State, Notre Dame, going to be there in person, and Penn State at Purdue. So I'm living it up, and I'm excited to talk some Bills cutdown day going forward.
Yeah, well, a lot of busy news coming out today. It was really interesting to get the final kind of look at what they did. I wouldn't say the Bills got crazy anywhere. I wouldn't say anything really, really jumped out to me. But, I mean, I released my roster prediction last week, or actually yesterday, on my final roster prediction. I hit 51 out of 53, so I was feeling pretty good about that all around. It was one of my better years ever. I didn't buy into any of the hype. Even my own Raheem Blackshear guy, I really hope the Bills bring back on the practice squad. Still wasn't feeling putting him on the active roster, but he's definitely probably a priority with Duke Johnson to find their way on to the practice squad for the Bills. And there's a lot of interesting names, and that's kind of what we'll talk about first, Mike. Let's bounce it to you. What is your initial takeaway from the roster? What is your most surprising cut, and why?
Yeah, for the most part, the roster was close to what I expected it to be. I think the most surprising cut has to be O.J. Howard, just because of the money involved in his NFL resume coming to Buffalo, getting cut for Quinton Morris and Tommy Sweeney. Obviously, O.J. Howard did not have the camp in the preseason that many fans were hoping he would have. Still has blocking ability, but really did not flash as a receiver in any aspect. And then going beyond that, it was pretty much standard what I thought. I know Isaiah Hodgins and Raheem Blackshear brought a lot of debates throughout the past month, but I really didn't see a spot for either of them based on the way the Bills roster was shaping up. Some people are going to bring up Marquez Stevenson, but obviously that he's going to be put on IR as soon as the Bills can do that. So the only real few moves that I maybe was thinking about was Tommy Sweeney making the team, and outside of that, pretty much lined up how I thought it would end up looking for the most part.
Yeah, I think the initial shocker for me was I didn't buy the hype of cutting O.J. Howard. That was when I had him on my roster prediction. I did have Quinton Morris on my roster prediction as well. Just feeling pretty good about that one. The injury yesterday was interesting about him coming up lame with his hamstring. So that was a little bit interesting, Mike, that he kind of potentially could have played a role in this. I'm not sure how serious that was. He seemed to be fine talking in the press conferences today. Seemed like, with the whole nameplate change for him, another MAC fullback, halfback, tight end that the Bills kept. Another, MAC shout out to with him and Reggie Gilliam, being able to convert from Bowling Green in Toledo. So it's very interesting to see that they are able to make a presence. Obviously, Cam Lewis making the roster, another MAC, really good cornerback in the MAC. And, thus has even been better in the NFL, honestly. He's been a better player here for the most part. So that was interesting to see him edge out Nick McLeod, a fan favorite early on, kind of like Tavon Austin. Nick McLeod was getting a lot of run. He was talked about, potentially being where kind of Benford is, maybe that guy that could step in and do a lot. And he got beat out by Cam Lewis, who was a guy that was able to play a little safety, special teams, He's a great run blitzer. Cam Lewis is going to bring a lot to the table for the Bills this year. And really excited to see what he's able to do, especially with Trey White. And the big news there is probably the most surprising news for me is I was still adamant that I thought that there was a way to keep him on the active roster. Bill said no. The Bill said 4 weeks plus, Mike, because of the ability to not practice. It's got to be 6 weeks. What's your initial reactions? And probably a little bit longer than I had anticipated.
Yeah, as they kept playing this out, I thought there was a possibility that he could potentially be active just so he could return around that week 4, week 3 period. But I can't criticize the Bills for playing it safe, putting him on PUP, keeping another roster spot open, and attacking it that way. The whole offseason with Trey and PUP, the timelines, a lot of fans, and rightfully so, they were on the correct side of this. We're saying he's probably going to miss the first month of the season and then take it from there. I was a little bit more optimistic throughout the process that I thought he could return sooner than that, just because you are seeing a lot of other players now return in that 9 to 10 month period. Right now, we're right around that 9-month point. So I might have been a little bit unrealistic about him coming back sooner. I didn't think LA Rams or Tennessee were going to be games where he would be full go and out there, but a little disappointed from that aspect. But you know what? It's the best thing for the player, and they'll just have to make up for it with the guys they have on the field. It's not going to be easy with Kyer Elam, Christian Benford, Taron Johnson, and Dane Jackson going up against Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson. But you know what? These guys are going to get some quality experience right out the gate, and this is a chance for them to prove that their preseason and training camp success wasn't just some luck early on in their careers, and that they can really shine given the opportunity.
Yeah, let me get into it a little bit more, Mike, just so we can kind of break down the entire gamut of what happened here. Yesterday, they released Jacob Capra, Tanner Owen, Neil Pau'u, Daniel Joseph, Jordan Miller, Josh Thomas. I see a couple of those names making a play for the practice squad. I said yesterday that maybe the Bills are trying to get them through waivers early so that they would be able to go ready to go on the practice squad as early as tomorrow. Neil Pau'u is a guy I'm watching out for. I think that he has the potential, especially with the unknown around Isaiah Hodgins. Does he clear waivers? Does he not? My Twitter mentions seem to tell me that he would not clear waivers as a pretty much a solid fact. I don't know that that's true. I'm going to wait and see with all the talent across the league. Tyler Johnson cut, many other receivers that were moved on from. I don't know that people have the roster spots to do this, but it's very possible the Bills did not expose their tight ends to waivers other than obviously OJ Howard. So I'm very interested to see if this Giants thing is real. With what they're going to do with the Bills roster, and if there's any players that Dable may want. But that was yesterday. I do think that you see Neil Pau'u on the practice squad. I think Jacob Capra is a guy you could see on the practice squad. I think you see Josh Thomas on the practice squad, and even maybe Jordan Miller, defensive back, or Daniel Joseph at the end, making the practice squad as well. Those are guys that I had predicted to make be on the practice squad here tomorrow, as early as tomorrow. And then the big news today, all of the final cuts today, Matt Barkley was practicing up until like a couple minutes before the cuts. So the Bills obviously are feeling pretty good that he's not going to get picked up, or as a vested vet, he can choose where he'd want to go. I still find it hard to believe that if a team wanted to sign him, he wouldn't do that. But Matt Barkley should be the Bills' main practice squad quarterback and one of the key cogs in that quarterback room. You also lost Greg Mance, a guy that I thought for sure had the backup center job. That was the one I got wrong. One of two players I got wrong. They went with Bobby Hart, Mike's Bobby Hart over Greg Mance. So that was one that I got wrong. I bought the hype of Bobby Hart being a usable player, but a practice squad player. I bought him as being a key practice squad guy. The Bills felt otherwise. Aaron Kromer thought that he was worth keeping on the roster. The Bills did not need to get crazy there, and that they would want to stash Bobby Hart on the roster. To me, I thought Greg Mance brought a little bit of that center versatility, that interior guard presence, but I do believe that they're hoping that no one's going to feel the need to sign Greg Mance to the active roster. He's a vested vet as well, has a lot of starts underneath him. I do anticipate the Bills very interested in keeping Greg Mance on their roster in the practice squad capacity. We also saw Luke Tenuta get cut, only draft pick to get cut. Bills are very good about keeping their draft picks. Probably going to the practice squad. Alec Anderson's been rumored already to be going to the practice squad, another offensive lineman that they paid pretty good UDFA money to. Raheem Blackshear, by all accounts, should see the practice squad. Duke Johnson as well. Tanner Gentry's always bouncing around the Bills practice squad. I feel like he's if they claim Hodgins, I do believe you'll see Gentry on the Bills practice squad. OJ Howard, not really sure what's going to go on with OJ. Probably will find a roster spot somewhere across the league. The Bills might get asked about him. I'm assuming the Bills made some phone calls about someone that may be interested in him. Mike Love, a guy that definitely is a key cog to the Bills practice squad. They really like him. Kingsley Jonathan, drafted by the CFL. He is a guy that, by all accounts, will be going to Canada, but we'll be interested to see if he'd rather stick around in the NFL. Brandon Bryant and Prince Emili, two definite practice squad candidates from the interior defensive line position. CJ Brewer, another. Joe Giles Harris, probably the main backup. We'll also see the practice squad as well. Nick McLeod, if he clears waivers, definitely a priority practice squad guys. Probably the last guy on the roster. And then also UB defensive back Jamarcus Ingram. Wouldn't be shocked to see him back if McLeod gets claimed and they go a different direction at the defensive back position. He is a guy that they seem to like to develop, showed some flashes, struggled at times in the preseason, in my opinion. But it is a good list. The Bills are really probably looking to bring back 14 of these guys. That's why you kept hearing me say practice squad. But once you can only keep 6 vested vets, and believe it or not as many people as you think are vested vets. I had to double and triple check my math a lot of times that some guys are still like 1 and 2 year vets, that would still be available, not counting to the 6, like Matt Barkley would count toward that 6, Duke Johnson, but there's still plenty of players who wouldn't count at that 6 level, Mike. So that's the mark. What is your priority do you have guys you're looking at out of those cuts? Like, I know you're not, super duper UDFA guy, but what do you think? Like, is there guys you'd like to see retained? Doesn't need to be a UDFA. Like, what are you thinking as terms of this cut list?
Are you talking about like guys I'd want to be on the Bills practice squad, or guys
the guys that you'd want on the Bills practice squad from this cut list?
Yeah, I feel a lot of the names that you mentioned right there are guys that I'd be very comfortable on the Bills practice squad. Obviously, if there's a way of getting Isaiah Hodgins and Raheem Blackshear, you want to squeak them onto the Bills practice squad. And Duke Johnson, obviously a tremendous training camp in preseason with the Bills. And there's a bunch of names that you went on that were good. I do like Kingsley Jonathan. I thought he flashed during the preseason. I would love if the Bills were able to keep him in Buffalo and continue to train him up. I'm not going to freak out too much about who makes it to the Bills practice squad, who doesn't. We talk every year about these final cut guys. Sometimes some of your favorite guys end up getting claimed. Sometimes they don't. Looking at the waiver wire today, some of those guys that the Bills cut last year that were claimed by other teams, back on the waiver wire today. So we're talking about the bottom guys of the roster. Most of the time, these aren't going to be guys that are going to be major impact players in the NFL. Sometimes a guy or two can find a way to surprise, but I'm pretty good with the majority of these guys going to the Bills practice squad that you mentioned, and I'm not really too worried about a guy or two out there that might get claimed.
Yeah, I think the Bills will be active they'll leave a couple spots where they like the roster a lot. These guys know the regime, they know the culture, but I do believe there's a spot or two, less than ever though, but I do believe there's a spot or two from outside guys. Leatherwood's interesting. He's a guy who was just a first round pick, played pretty bad by all accounts last year, but bad enough to get cut as a second year guy. That's troubling to me. So, there are some names out there that the Bills could go ahead and claim if they like on their roster, or extend practice squad offers to a premier roster that is attractive to people, that they'd be able to come, be their best self, play underneath a good offense, play in a good defense, whatever the case may be, and decide to assign to the Bills practice squad if so they choose. So that'll be an interesting thing to monitor over the 24 hours. But we actually haven't talked here, Mike, on the Going Deep podcast really since Punter situation that happened here in Buffalo with Matt Ariza being released, that wild preseason game 3, last week. And, the circumstances that were really tough to coach in, as Sean McDermott even admitted to, stood up there, answered all the questions. Furthermore, Brandon Beane and McDermott went up the next day and answered even more, as many as they could, admitting to, the thorough name was kind of used lightly, but they did feel that they had a good handle on it. is not worth the situation to see due process, and the Bills moved on from the situation, Mike. However, they need a punter, and you had Reed Ferguson today basically say, we need to get reps in on the holding game. Not that it's hard, but they do need to adjust to how Tyler Bass likes to hold, how he likes the ball held. And, the punting situation should be fine. They should be able to come in and punt from day one. That's not going to be an issue, but we need to get that operation down. And first and foremost, it's almost like all the stars align for the Bills for the opportunity to upgrade punter in the form of future or, maybe future Hall of Famers, but former All-Pros in Kern. He is a player that has been a dominant punter in this league. He's from Grand Island. I'd be shocked if he wasn't.
That's a phrase I never thought I'd ever hear.
What's that?
Dominant punter.
He has been, 10 plus years. He's like kind of their Brian Moorman in a way. He's a guy that has been just quite frankly why Mike Vrabel's special teams is really good. So I think Kern is a guy that would be highly targeted by the Bills here early on. And probably my number one player that I'd be interested in adding here tomorrow. When you put Marquez Stevenson, who did make the original roster, onto the practice or onto the IR, he will open up a spot for punter. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on the punter situation? Do you want a veteran? Do you want more of a guy you can have for multiple years at a cheaper price? What is your opinion on what the Bills need to get done tomorrow?
It all seems to be aligning for Brett Kern to be the Bills' next punter. I don't know how the Bills feel about that as far as if he wants some additional money. Do you just give him what he wants, or do you get someone a little bit cheaper that doesn't have quite the resume? But we are talking about a punter, so it wouldn't be a big amount of cash either way. But Brett Kern seems like a natural fit. He's been one of the best punters in the NFL during the course of his career. He's getting up there in age. I believe he's 36 right now. Buffalo area native, Grand Island. So for me, if I'm the Bills, I'm reaching out to him, and I'm going to try to make him the next punter. Tim Graham reported that the Bills have already reached out to his camp, so there definitely seems to be some mutual interest. Obviously, the Bills had the tryout over the weekend on Sunday where they brought in some guys, and there are some decent names in that list. So regardless of how the Bills go forward, they're going to get someone that is probably going to be an upgrade over what Matt Hawk was last year. And I think it's going to work out okay for the Bills as far as special teams. I'm not too worried about the holding aspect. I know I'm not an NFL player, and I understand where Reed Ferguson is coming from. It definitely matters getting the right feel and making sure everybody's on the same page. But regardless of whoever these punters that the Bills bring in, they're going to be people that have experience doing that. So it's not going to be someone's first rodeo, which is a big reason why we were talking about Matt Araiza all summer, was him not doing that in college. So I'm not really too worried about that aspect of it. And one thing I will say, the next Bills punter will not be Jake Shum, who has been posting a million videos on Twitter and getting Bills Mafia riled up about bringing the Hamburg native onto the Bills. I can guarantee you one thing. He will not be the next Bills punter.
No, didn't even make the original 4 workouts. It's not looking good. They did reach out to Marquette King. Pilardi's a guy they have experience with. Ryan. There's a couple of other good punters out there the Bills could go and entertain. The market's too deep, though. You can get a high-end guy right now. It is a good year to need a punter. There's more punters than there are jobs. So we have Kern going. We have Drew Chrisman, a guy that actually did lose to Huber, that was expected to win the job in Cincinnati. So he's a guy that would be more in that mold of 4 years, kind of what you were hoping for when you drafted Araiza. You're going to get a guy like that in Chrisman that could come in and be young, be here for a while, and get a good price on. He has to clear waivers, though, so he'd be an interesting name to keep your eye out on if the Bills do decide to go young. Maybe they try to put a claim in for him. If they don't get him, they will entertain another route. But he is an interesting player that the Bills could actually absolutely go at with going young at the position like they hopefully wanted to do. Also, don't forget they have also there was another punter by Sam Martin. Played really well in Denver last year. By all accounts, was one of the best punters in the league. He was moved on from. He wanted a pay raise, and they came to him for a pay cut, and he said absolutely not. Interesting move. He felt like he could get a job though. There's not a ton of punter jobs open. Matt Hawk taking one from Indy helps the Bills. He is not as good as majority of these names here. That's the funny part. He's like, oh, the Bills got rid of Matt Hawk. Good. Like, he shouldn't be on the roster anyways. The Bills now have an opportunity to take the best punter in the league that's available. So they're in a unique position to come and say, hey, come play for a good team. You're going to be in good situations. You're going to hold for a good kicking game. There's a lot to like about what the Bills are able to offer a punter, Mike.
Yeah, and I remember when Matt Hawk originally restructured his deal in the offseason, a lot of people were like, does this mean he's going to be our punter for another season? And there's a lot of disappointment among the fan base, and some reporters were critical. And I remember thinking at that point in time, this is just semantics right now. You don't have another punter. You're just taking care of some money. And if you want to, you could still easily sign one or draft one. Obviously, they drafted Ariza. Situation occurred. And now they're in a situation where neither of them are available to the Bills. And in the end, they're still getting an upgrade at the position. And if you're the Bills, that's the most important thing. You're improving your special teams regardless. And yes, it's not the ideal way to do it, where you're forced to take someone a week before the start of the regular season. But if there was one position in the entire NFL that you were okay with having a brand new guy come in and take over, it's probably punter. More so than even kicker or long snapper or any of that stuff, where there's some other things that go into account. But I'm confident the Bills are going to get one of these guys, and it's going to all be okay when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. And we cannot forget to one guy I wanted to bring up just for fun. Could be a practice squad candidate, but maybe the Bills will feel the need to hedge their bet with whatever their punter choice is Dicker, the kicker. He's a guy that is a kicker. He's a punter. One of the best, most decorated players in Texas football history. He's a guy that has shown he could punt big punts in big games, and he can nail field goals. Would it really be a really useful player to have on your active game day roster if something ever happens to Bass? Sitting on the sideline, someone like Dicker could really help the Bills out as well. So I think there are multiple ways they could go with a vet like Martin or Kern. They could go with Chrisman or Cameron Dicker, the kicker. So there are a multitude of different ways the Bills could go with this situation. And I quite frankly think it's most of them, if not all, are an upgrade. Even the 4 guys they brought in before those guys were released, that's the next 4 guys. The first 4 guys I still think are mostly an upgrade over Matt Hawk. So either way, I think the Bills are working out. Matt Hawk went and had a really good one preseason game in a dome. Good for him. That means the Colts aren't going to make a move, leaving more punters for the Bills to make a move on. So
I do want to address this one comment too. It says Martin gained 10 yards per punt with a thin Denver air. I understand that Denver does help you as a punter, as a kicker, but Martin also had solid
road
statistics on the road and prior when he was in Detroit.
He was better on the road.
So Martin is a good punter all around. Yes, Denver might elevate your numbers in some regard, but he's also done well enough in other areas to be worth coming to Buffalo. I would not hold that against him if the Bills wanted to move forward.
Let me address that because it's not true. So he actually was better on the road. Sam Martin's total road kicks, a net average of 43.18, as well as average hang time 4.21 on the road. His home total 4.17 hang time. So actually not true at all. He actually played just as good on the road as he did. At least it's a net equal in most statistical categories for him on his road total. His road totals are still better than Matt Hawk, who was just 38 net average, 42 yards per attempt. Just not a very good punter all the way around. All of his statistics were poor. PFF ranked him 31 out of 33 qualified punters. Just wasn't good. There's no reason that the Bills shouldn't have moved on from him anyways. That's the best part. It's like, Bills cut their punter. Good. He should have been cut anyways. He wasn't very good. So he had many lapses, whether he took forever to kick the ball was one of his biggest. He did have good hang time, was the only positive. Took forever to kick the ball in punter land. That's a no-no. He was a good holder, so that was a pro for Hawk, but ultimately he was not very good at his job, and that's just what it is. I do believe Kern's a firm upgrade from him. Kevin Huber would have been an upgrade. He was capped for Chrisman, who is a free agent, but Sam Martin's definitely very good in all the way around, whether he's on the road or whether he's home. So just we'll see which way the Bills could go multiple ways at the punter position.
They'll be fine either way.
Yeah.
I mean,
this isn't quarterback.
They have options. They're going to get someone good. They're going to be fine at punter. So right now it's just, who do the Bills want? Does money play a factor? We'll see. Some of these punters, we're getting decent money for their position, but when you get to this point, you're just looking to play for a team right now. So the Bills, I'm not really worried about the money situation when it comes to attacking any of these guys. If any of them wants more money than the Bills are willing to pay, you just go to the next guy in your list. So either way, it's going to work out.
Yeah, for sure. And the Bills come down with around $8.3 million in cap space as of right now, as some of the final cuts still trickle in. They have to pay some other things. They should wind up right around the 5 to 6 to 7 range. We'll see what all that turns out when the final moves are officially made. So to me, the Bills can go whatever they want to do at the punter role. They're going to have all the leverage. They're going to say, hey, we have a really good job open for you. We're not going to give you 2.5 a year like you may have wanted if Martin is the choice. I don't think anyone else would require a lot of money. Maybe Kern would ask for a little bit, but the Bills still aren't out of the thinking of maybe they'll go Chrisman, maybe they'll go Cameron Dicker. It's really interesting how that'll all play out for them in the next 12 hours, 24 hours there from the punter position. And for me, I put Kern on my final roster prediction just because I do believe he checks most boxes. Veteran can come in day one, know how to hold, has been in useful offenses before. His experience in Tennessee should help. So he's played in the AFC. I just believe that he would be a really good fit for the Bills. That's my first choice. But I do like the wild cards of Chrisman and Cameron Dicker as well as some guys to look out for from the young standpoint. As we continue on, though, as we kind of break down the roster, and one thing that I really had in mind, Mike, was the cornerback room and how that played out. So you have obviously Trey White going to PUP, as we talked about. You have Dane Jackson starting by all accounts. Who are you putting across from Dane Jackson in 9 days from right this minute, Mike? Who's starting?
It has to be Kaiir Elam. Even if you think Benford had just as impressive a preseason in camp, there is a 0% chance that the Bills are going to trot out a 6th-round rookie draft pick over a 1st-round rookie draft pick for the season opener. So just because otherwise you're saying that you're questioning your 24th overall pick in the draft. So I'm going to guess it's going to be Kaiir. I feel pretty confident in that, and we'll see how it goes. I can't say I have 100% confidence in Kaiir Elam against the LA Rams opening night. I don't know what we're going to see. It's a big transition from college football to the pros, especially when you're going up against one of the most dynamic offenses in the NFL. So, like I said, we'll probably see Elam, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Benford getting some time and some of the other guys maybe getting some time as well, because at this point, you're just going to go with whoever's playing the best. And you give Kaiir the first opportunity, and if he gets burnt, then you go down the depth chart.
Yeah, what's interesting is I don't know that you can have an active game. We talk about this on the show. I don't know that there's an active game day roster spot for Benford. He needs to be able to play special teams. That's where Cam Lewis comes in. He could be the guy that would see game action if Kaiir Elam falters, mainly because he needs that player can't just stand on the sidelines the entire game due to the inactive list. He needs to be able to play special teams. So that's where it gets sticky. Yes, you can probably make that change to start against Tennessee, but what's going to be interesting is you can't have 6 active cornerbacks without really hurting your roster elsewhere on game day. So it's going to be interesting to see, do the Bills, they already have to use one on Saran Neal on the special teams. What do the Bills do? Do they hedge their bet and say, we need to have all 6 of them active in case? That's a real question for Sean McDermott in 9 days.
I guess, who do you think the Bills are higher on at corner, Benford or Lewis? I would tell you that probably based on this preseason, it's Benford at the moment. Obviously, special teams does play a role, but I would be thinking Dane Jackson is going to be your number 1 to start the season with Trey White out. Going to put Kaiir 2. You got Taryn as your slot corner, and then I would have Benford as the next guy up. Maybe I'm off on that, but based on what we saw in the preseason, I would think that Benford is going to get more play than Lewis, but who knows? it could go either way.
Right. And I think that they want Benford in the form of like, would prefer to have Benford in, is still a rookie, is coming off of, low end D1 football, FCS. I mean, but still, like, ultimately Cam Lewis had bigger experience as a mid-major, but like, you put that aside, he has played in there well. He's played against Kansas City, does play special teams. Those factors might be the reason that he would get an active game day spot and why he made the roster over McLeod and then maybe over Benford, because Benford might only be able to start. And that is good to have, but you need to be able to cover. And the Bills have said it many times already. You need to play special teams, especially from the backup of backups now. So can they roster Benford on game day? That's going to be a big question is do they have an active game day spot for Benford? That's something I'm going to monitor. As of right now, I have Benford inactive on game day unless they are going to take a risk from their special teams unit to hedge their bet in the first couple of games, or at least till they see that they can fully trust Kaiir Elam and Dane Jackson. I don't know that Dane Jackson is bulletproof either in terms of if he's messing up, do they go to two rookies, Mike?
That's why
is Dane Jackson is he starter proof?
This is the one big concern the Bills have going into the season is how is it going to look these first 4 weeks with Dane Jackson and Kaiir Elam or whoever you put across from Dane Jackson in your secondary. I believe the Bills will be okay and that they'll get out of this fine. And obviously Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, they have a past history of success with lesser talent in their secondary. But this is not a guarantee it's going to be an easy ride the first 4 weeks with what they have here. I think a lot of us are putting our money on their defensive line getting enough pressure and Micah and Jordan being on the back end to make sure that these corners aren't overly exposed. But if you have a situation where maybe the pass rush isn't what we expect in these early weeks, there could be situations where the Bills defense could get exposed at times, especially against the Rams and potentially against some of the other teams on their schedule. I don't have the schedule up in front of me right now, but I believe Miami is one of the first 4 games of the season as well. Going up against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that's not going to be a guaranteed easy time. And no. I know we're talking about teams that are like Tennessee and Baltimore that like to run the ball more, but those are still teams that can be decent offensively and pose threats. So this isn't going to be the cakewalk that many fans are talking about going into the regular season. The first 8 games are going to be tough. And if Kaiir Elam, if Benford, if Cam Lewis, even if they struggle early on with Trey White out, the Bills might have to play some shootouts early on. Not a guarantee. If the D-line comes out and they're balling and they're getting pressure,
they're hoping for
it'll take away a lot of the pressure away from the secondary. But if they don't generate a pass rush early on, it is one area to look out for.
Here's my final position roster. This is what I had predicted yesterday. I thought it was pretty interesting to bring up. I was just wanting to kind of go through it and kind of look at it in depth chart form. Obviously, nothing too big at the top there. I didn't have Hodgins making the roster. As you continue, my only miss there on the offensive side of the ball were having Mans instead of Bobby Hart, which I still I like my path there, but that's okay. If Cromer sees something in Bobby Hart, that's fine with me. And then you have obviously Howard not making it, and you do have Tommy Sweeney making the roster. The Bills probably felt like he would get claimed. I mean, he's good in the locker room. There are plenty of reasons why they made that move. As you look at the defense, I almost predicted that spot on what I thought the defense would look like. And we're talking about the cornerback room right now, specifically to Taron Johnson is a guy that is going to have the biggest assignment with Cooper Kupp. So that's kind of what you're hoping for, is that your best slot corner, paid as one of the best in the league, can at least be effective against Cooper Kupp. From there, you're hoping that Allen Robinson has a battle with Dane Jackson. We'll see how that turns out. It does seem on paper that is advantage Allen Robinson at this stage, but that that could be wrong. We have to see what Dane Jackson's able to do. And then you have Kaiir Elam, probably seeing realistically the third receiver in the Rams offense, and that right now is not the world beater. You're going to get a Van Jefferson, a Ben Skoranek, You're going to see Brandon Powell. You're going to see a couple of these guys that aren't going to be world beaters. So there isn't a lot of depth on the Rams side. You have 2 good receivers. And maybe you put on Kyrie Elam day 1 against Allen Robinson for a real test, and you put Dane Jackson against a Van Jefferson, etc. But there's many ways that can go here, just as early as 9 days from now, Mike. So really, from there, their tight end room is just really Tyler Higbee. So there is in the world's greatest weapons right there without OBJ on that offense, and a couple of other changes to the team in general. A potential quarterback that has been talked about at times needing Tommy John surgery. So we'll see how this all plays out if they're going to go with a run-heavy Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson. The offense, to me, isn't the best one the Bills will see. So I do believe that the Bills have a minor they do need to pay special attention to Cooper Kupp, but I do believe they'll have zone plans for him between Taron Johnson, between Matt Milano, between Micah Hyde. They will have an answer to at least see what they can do in the zone against those premier slot receivers. So that's going to be what's interesting. So this is the way that I predicted the roster to go, and I didn't have a ton of misses, Mike. So, really defensively, I did predict Cam Lewis to make it. One of my last roster spots, I picked Spector on the roster, thought he played really good. Said from day one of the first things that Brandon Beane came out and said to everybody, we needed linebacker depth. With the Andre Smith suspension, I thought that Spector was borderline, always going to make the roster outside of a bad performance. He did so. Dodson is a special teamer. He is a captain on the team, actually. So is Tyler Matakevich. And then you have obviously Terrell Bernard sitting there and Edmonds and Milano. So to me, the defense, and then there was some of that talk about Shaq Lawson. He was the best player on the field in those 2s versus 3s games. So he was always the best player. He was one of the best players in some of the preseason defensive performances once the starters went out. So there really wasn't a path for any other DN to make the roster. It's a really solid defense, Mike, especially once you plug Trey White into this unit. What is your opinion? Here's obviously this is the depth chart minus, obviously Bobby Hart's on the roster, and so is Tommy Sweeney. But with those being said, what do you see from there? Like, where do you think this defense? They didn't make. Look, I predicted their defense. Is that a good thing? Like, what do you think? How does that look on paper? Because they're expecting this defensive line to help out this unit we're talking about.
Yeah, on paper, the defense looks elite. They were last year in all the statistical categories, but the one thing we knew they were missing was a pass rush when it mattered the most, when you need a sack, when you need to actually take down a quarterback, not just generate a pressure. Can you get to the quarterback? Can you get Mahomes down? And now you got Von Miller, who in the biggest moments of the biggest games, that's when he plays his best football. So on paper, this looks like an elite unit. I'm not going to predict they're going to be the best statistical team on defense. I'm not expecting them to be the best in yards allowed per game and points allowed per game, because obviously last year some of their matchups contributed to that, played a lot of backup quarterbacks early on in the season, and then had some horrendous weather games late in the season that definitely impacted the style of football that was being played. So I don't know if they're going to be a top 2, top 3 unit in the stats, but I expect them to look a lot better overall. And really, you don't look at many defenses in the NFL where you can go D-line, strong, linebacker, strong, safeties, elite, and then corners once Trey White is healthy, and say that's a strength for you as well. It's one of the most rounded units overall. So hopefully Trey White midseason is able to come back 100%, because if he is, this defense might be the best unit talent-wise in the NFL.
Yeah, and really where you guys are going to start to see some value, we're going to start breaking down some stuff down. I think we have a Khalil Shakir video dropping here tonight, and we're going to have the Cover One film room as well. Please make sure you subscribe to One Pass. You're going to get a nice t-shirt. I still got to give one away, Mike. I don't think I've given one away yet. I want to give away a pass to somebody, one of our live listeners, one of these. I'll have to get with Eric about that. But you have access to all of our content from all of our great across the league information. We have draft coverage. Obviously, you can learn the sport from Eric Turner inside the film room. So make sure you get out there and support Cover One Pass. And what's really interesting across what I'm anticipating to happen here are the Bills to make moves tomorrow, Mike. I do believe beside Punter, I don't know 100% that this is the way it's going to turn out. We're expecting it to look Quentin Morris, Tommy Sweeney. We're expecting to see some of this to stay the same, but I would not be shocked by a move somewhere at tight end. I wouldn't be shocked by a move, with the Trey White news of for sure being on PUP. I would not be shocked at a corner move. We've heard rumblings of Odell Beckham now that the IR can happen. So you can sign Odell Beckham and put him on IR now that it's past the roster day. There are going to be some interesting pieces. And by all accounts, the Odell Beckham Jr. talk is still on. It's not dying. It is, by all accounts, one of his finalists to where he'll sign this season. So that could have played a role into the Hodgins decision. There's a lot that goes into this that the Bills are like, well, it doesn't really matter if Hodgins makes the team because we have plans for OBJ.
Yeah, if you already knew that, like if Bean knows that OBJ is a real possibility, then honestly, Hodgins, you're like, sorry, we got a better option later in the season available to us potentially. The one thing that I found really interesting, we've been speculating on it since before the draft, is we thought that if Trey White was going to be in a situation where he had to go on regular season PUP, you and I both thought the Bills would bring in a free agent corner to give some competition to the rest of the room. I'm very surprised that here we are 9 days before the start of the regular season, and the Bills are actually sticking with the corners that they're going with. And it's not that they haven't played well. It's the fact that knowing the way Sean McDermott coaches and runs this operation, I just would have thought he would want a veteran leader or someone with multiple years of NFL experience to lead this unit. Even if they weren't the number one, but maybe a number two, I really thought that a Joe Hayden or someone similar like that would be attractive to the Bills. And you know what? I'm not saying that Joe Hayden is at this point of his career is any better than what they currently have, but it is a little bit of a risk going into the season with what they have in the corner room, minus Trey White. So they either have to love what they have in that room currently, or they're admitting to themselves, we are taking a little bit of a gamble here.
What did the Bills do at corner? I've always thought they needed to add one, especially with the news of the situation with Trey White. I do believe Joe Hayden's out there. I do think that he's being pushed for hard by Von Miller. He's one on the Von Miller list of come play here situation. I don't think he's the world's worst addition to the roster at this point. I do think there is some left in the tank there for him. I'm very interested to see now that all the decisions are made what the Bills do tomorrow. It is a big day because they're only a week away, 8 days tomorrow from the start of the season. They're going to get serious with the roster today, but very, very, very quickly tomorrow. So I'm interested to see what the Bills do at that position. Don't forget the new norm, Mike, is putting one of those guys on the practice squad to start with. That's the norm since COVID from 2020 season, that those guys can go on there. If they choose your team, they're pretty safe to not get plucked by another team because they chose, they're a vet. They chose to play for you. They get put on the practice squad. They don't need to take up a roster. You don't need to cut Cam Lewis. You don't need to make moves like that, but you're able to put him on the practice squad and then call them up on a game-to-game basis. Maybe that's the way they go to start with. Put a player like Hayden on the practice squad, call him up early on in the season, see how that goes, and then make the determination if you'd like to keep him over one of the players that you have on the active roster. Bills did it in the playoffs. They did it with players. They were going to do it with Shaq Lawson before Shaq's injury at the end of last season. And they also did it with like Devontae Freeman and a couple of other guys where, Kenny Stills, they're very willing to do that with veterans now with the practice squad rules. So the Bills could be really interested in some of these vets going onto the practice squad. Now that they have 16 more spots to fill on the practice squad, they could very easily utilize one of those on some of these free agents they've been eyeing now for a little bit of time. So it'll say a lot to me what the Bills do over the next 24 hours, not just at the punter position, but importantly, if you see a vet come up in there, the Bills are pretty serious about upgrading to that room. And there's a lot of talk about Sweeney right now. I agree. I don't know how good he is as a player. I'm interested to see here if he's how he looks. I do believe he's gearing toward an active game day situation to where, once again, you have to have 5 inactives on game day anyways, what the Bills do there. But I wouldn't be shocked to see a tight end upgrade, Mike. I really is one of the rooms I'm looking at that it's safe right now, but I do believe the Bills could upgrade to that in 24 hours.
Yeah, we'll see. And it is kind of funny because we've been talking about 2 tight end formations all offseason and mentioning it as a possibility. That's something that the Bills want to do more of heading into this season. And they kept 3 tight ends, which would say maybe it's still a possibility, but it's going to be Quinton Morris or Tommy Sweeney doing it instead of O.J. Howard. But it seems unlikely when you cut O.J. Howard that you're going to see a ton of 2 tight end formation this year. Will be interesting what they have for plans for Morris because he has flashed. No one's going to deny that Quinton Morris hasn't looked solid through camp, and it is quite the rise to be a MAC player and to get to the spot that he has gotten to. But I have some excitement, but I don't want to raise the bar too high for Morris when he really hasn't done anything to this point yet in his NFL career. I want to see what the Bills have plans for him going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting at the tight end room. That's one of the biggest rooms I'm keeping my eye on with all these cuts across the league. Plenty of players out there if the Bills do want to make a move. So that's, there's plenty to be said at the tight end room, and I don't know that this is the official tight end room. So I'm going to be interested to see if they add to that. Still not sure about the cornerback room, if that's official room. And the Bills are looking forward to having a blocking tight end like Quinton Morris who can catch a little bit. So I think that Quinton Morris, yes, it wasn't what you were thinking as your 2 tight end sets. But right now, if he's healthy, I do believe you see him on plenty. He started with Dawson Knox being out in the dress rehearsal quarter. I mean, that's pretty big. The only reps that Josh Allen had, some of them were with Quinton Morris. So that means something, that the few reps that he was 6 reps or whatever it was that he took, Quinton Morris was in on a bunch of them. So to me, that says something, that's not just reps you threw away when they're that few. So at that point should have been a pretty good indicator. And it was to me that he's looking like he's definitely rosterable, let alone getting in some time with the ones when this all goes down. So I do believe the Bills will utilize Quinton Morris for his blocking and what he's able to do, as long as he didn't get a major injury yesterday. By all accounts, I don't believe it was. But the Bills only have 9 days to get ready now. And I wouldn't be shocked to see some moves on the practice squad as early as tomorrow. So that's some veteran moves on the practice squad as early as tomorrow, and able to get them ready for potentially the start of the season here coming up, Mike. So with all that being said, what is your most exciting room of the entire roster? Got to put Josh Allen aside. What is the most exciting room that you think that after all this minutia, all this talk, UDFAs, what's your favorite unit as we approach the Rams game in 9 days?
Just taking a look at the different units in the depth chart right now, I have a couple that stick out to me. I don't know if you want to combine the D tackles and
Sure.
D ends as D line, but that's definitely probably the first one that sticks out to me. This defensive line should be nasty, and the way they attacked it, obviously stinks losing Harrison Phillips, but you add Von Miller to the edge, a Hall of Famer who is going to bring it every single week. Greg Rousseau, is he going to make a sophomore leap? I think some fans are a little bit premature saying he's going to be a double-digit sack guy in the second year, but I do expect quite a improvement overall. He was already a good run stopper. I'm hoping we do see a little bit more in the rushing aspect. Then you got Boogie Basham, AJ Epineza. Are they going to show us something? Show us why we invested a high picks on them in the past? And then you go inside with the D tackles. Daquan Jones, he's going to take up space. Ed Oliver, is this the year that he finally feasts? And we saw the production at the end of last year, but are we going to see him add to his ability to rushing the quarterback, maybe improve those sack totals in year 5? And Tim Settle, he's the unsung guy where you're really buying low, but you think you can get some nice situational play from him. And Jordan Phillips being back, another guy with a motor that can just get to the quarterback. So I would say the D-line is probably the number one room I'm interested in. I'm not going to say quarterback or wide receiver because I think those are obvious targets. But the running back room, I'm very interested to see how the Bills handle things with running back going into a week-by-week basis. I think they have 3 different defined roles for Singletary, Cook, Moss. Are they going to carry 3 on game days, or are they going to stick to Singletary and Cook or Singletary and Moss? It's going to be interesting because I don't think you keep Moss unless you actually have a purpose and a role for him. But that would be something different than what they did last year. So I'm really interested to see how the Bills use their running backs going forward.
Mike, did the Bills make a mistake with Jake Kummerow over Isaiah Hodgins?
No.
Why is that?
Because Kummerow is a valuable special teams player who, if the Bills cut him, would be picked up by another team instantaneously as an actual person that's going to contribute on game days. While Isaiah Hodgins, we're talking about the potential of him being a 5-6 wide receiver. Yeah, if he gets in the right situation with the right coach, maybe he can go out there and contribute. But there's a reason Isaiah Hodgins was going up against backups the entire preseason and didn't go up against 1s and 2s. And it's one thing to produce against backup corners and defenses, but it's another thing to do that against starters and the top corners in the NFL. I like Isaiah Hodgins. I think it'd be great if the Bills can keep him on their practice squad, but the Bills are too deep for him to make it at wide receiver, especially when he doesn't bring anything to the table from a special teams perspective.
My question is right now, does he get claimed? Yes or no?
It's a 50-50. I mean, I know I'm hedging it right there by saying that, but I'll say the Giants, if it wasn't for the Giants situation with Dable, I'd say no. But knowing that Dable is like lurking out there, I'll say I'll go out on a limb. I'll say yes. The Giants will claim him. If the Giants don't, I think he goes unclaimed.
Yeah, I agree. The roster is certainly not set yet. That is for sure, as we've been saying in the last segment about talking about potential to the tight end room, potential to the corner room, maybe even across a couple other position groups. It is not set yet. The Bills feel pretty set at the running back room. Zach Moss did go out and win the running back 3 job to my dismay. Did have him on the roster, as you saw in my roster prediction a little bit earlier in the show, but he didn't make it. He did look good. He looks good in preseason, though. That has been his MO.
That ankle is healthy. He's healthy.
Okay. The ankle's healthy. All right, let's see the ankle's healthy. His running between the tackles isn't better than anybody else on the roster. So we'll see where his niche is. We'll see where he fits in to this unit, to this entire team. Will he be active on game days?
Here's what I would think of, because I've been defending Zach throughout our shows for the past month. Zach Moss, and I know the stats don't back it up, so don't kill me on this because I know I'm saying some shit. Sorry for that. Saying some stuff that isn't factually backed. But Zach Moss, in my opinion, is a good red zone running back. He has the ability. He's a decent receiver out of the backfield. He is good in pass protection. And he has the size and ability to be a goal line back. Now, he hasn't shown consistent results as a goal line back, but I think he has the tools that you like to work with inside the 20. Will he bring it to the table? The Bills, I think, are betting that he will now that he's healthy. That ankle injury, it impacted him quite a bit. That last year was brutal for Zach Moss. So if he's considerably better, I'm going to have to believe that that injury played a significant role in him struggling last year.
Absolutely. So I'll agree with that. I can agree with that, but I do need to see him be better inside the tackles. Like just straight up, he is not as effective as anybody else to take snaps away. Do you activate him on, or is he one of your 5 inactives, Mike? Zach Moss, you like him, so what do you? Are you playing him week 1?
I had this debate with Hans the other day, one of our writers at Cover One,
who was saying game 1.
He was saying that the Bills aren't going to have 3 active running backs outside of special teams contributions, including Tywan Jones, on a week by week basis. I think last year they did it maybe 2 or 3 times, but I think that was a different situation last year with Breida. I don't think Breida really brought a necessary upgrade to the table when he was in the game. I look at it right now. Devin Singletary is clearly the one. He has the best elusiveness, the best vision, and he's just consistent. You know what you're getting out of him. He's not the best receiver, pretty limited. Like, he'll catch the ball, but he's not going to give you a wide open area and yards after catch and all of that stuff that you'd want from a better receiving running back. James Cook, that's where you're hoping you get that. You're hoping that Cook is going to be that dynamite receiver out of the backfield. And then Moss, you're getting a little combination of both. You got that the pass protection. You got the ability to catch some balls out of the backfield. And then that tough short yardage situations. I really think that's where they want him to take over for Josh Allen. Yes, you want Josh to run the ball when you're inside the 20. You're okay with a QB power then, or get a hard third down late in the game. But for the most part, you want to take away some of those opportunities from Josh and have someone else take care of those. And I think that's where Zach Moss comes in.
Fair enough. I mean, he ultimately won the job. I liked what I saw from Duke Johnson, a guy that has been reported he is expected to be back on the practice squad unless he's assigned to an active roster. So we'll see how that turns out between him and Blackshear. The Bills do have some depth on running back. They can go to that depth if Moss doesn't become the player that they think he can be. But we'll see. They do need to make 5 inactive on game day. One of them will be an offensive lineman. One of them probably is going to have to come from the Zach Moss running back room. You probably are going to have to make one of those corners inactive. So there aren't enough of just because these guys made the roster, 5 of them cannot play.
It might be matchup based too, for all we know. Like, it doesn't need to be.
Usually is. Yeah,
it doesn't need to be. What I would say is you're probably going to see a compromise from last year and this year, where I don't think you're going to see all 3 Singletary, Cook, Moss be active every game. But I don't think it's going to be as rare as it was last year either. I'd say maybe half the season you see them all 3 for maybe 7, 8, 9 games, but it's not going to be every week. And you never know. There could be an injury to one of them. I feel good about the depth of any of them having to take on a full-time role if need be.
It's possible, but at the end of the day, like, they're not going to have enough active game day roster spots for the amount that they're going to throw the ball. So that's going to be what's interesting to me across the league. Moss will absolutely not be a running back too. I don't know who he would jump, but as of right now, without an injury, I wouldn't see Moss not becoming the running back too.
When you take James Cook in the second round, he's got to be the second running back.
Right. And interesting offensive line. A lot of Bobby Hart, people are nervous about Bobby Hart. He is currently the inactive offensive lineman as of right now on the roster. So I don't think you need to be too concerned until there's another injury or two. But Greg Van Roten, a guy I was talking about all offseason, everyone's like, Kevin, he's not going to make the team. It's like, nah, he's going to be valid veteran presence. He won the backup center job. He's going to be active on game day by all accounts because he is going to be plug and played if something ever happened to Morris. He beat Mance for that backup center job by all reports. So Van Roten will be active on game days. You'll have obviously Spencer Brown and Quisenberry active. I still don't know who technically is the starting right tackle as of this moment. Could be Q still. So those are going to be your 7. And then you get an 8th now with all the new rules. You can activate an 8th lineman. By all accounts, it would be Tommy Doyle. I guess it could be between Doyle and who's played everything and Hart. So one of those guys will have to be inactive on game day based on, I guess, like you said, matchups, or maybe just Cromer already knows. So there's one of your inactives right there. If you're playing ahead, you're probably looking at one of, call it Hart. You're kind of looking at someone from the corner room. Is it Benford? Is it Cam Lewis? What are they going to do with the inactives on the corner room? That's going to be an interesting battle. Is it going to be Spector, a guy that made the roster for special teams? They might not have the luxury to have him active on game day. So another inactive there. You're going to have to make Moss inactive. There's just not enough game day roster spots right now. Unless you really have plans for him, you're going to have to get Squeaky somewhere else. And then tight end, you just don't have room with Reggie Gilliam starting and playing. You're just not going to have room to play Quentin Morris and Sweeney. Based on matchups, maybe something there, maybe based on injuries. If he's banged up and not ready to go, and Morris, then you'd see Sweeney. But that's going to be, to me, your 5th and actives as you approach game day in 9 days. So that's my projection of who's not going to be able to play on week 1. So that's really where you have some interesting, and then that's not to mention any new roster players. So let me read you some names here, Mike. I'll read off some of the names of veteran free agent corners that could absolutely pique the Bills' interest. Trey Waynes, Joe Hayden, Jimmy Smith, Xavier Rhodes, Kevin King, Janoris Jenkins. There is enough there for the Bills to pick from if they do think they need an upgrade. So for sure, now that they know that they're going to be missing 4 weeks of Trey White with no practice, 5th week, 6th, 4 weeks is probably going to take him his time to be ready, game shape. Then he's probably going to need a practice week, at least 5th, week 5 against the Steelers. He's probably going to be looking at week 6 before you realistically have him, and maybe needs that 6th week to get ready. The 6th week is probably the first time you'll see him active, maybe, but he probably won't see a full complement till week 6, week 7, and beyond. So that's kind of what's going on there. But I do think that those veteran cornerbacks could be a really interesting play for the Bills here with one of those names who have done it at high level. Each of those guys has been effective at times. Hayden's been on top of the cornerback of the league. Jenkins has been good at times. Trey Waynes has been good. So there's definitely Kevin King's been good. There's definitely some names there that probably the Bills will go after and say, hey, let's put you on the practice squad. You're the first guy in. We might call you up as soon as week 1 or week 2. Let's get you going. I do believe that that's the way that this will work out as we approach tomorrow with one of their 16 practice squad spots, which is a ton of practice squad spots. So are you disappointed with staying on corner for a minute? Are you disappointed with the White news? Is that disappointing? I know we, always expected. To me, I thought 9 months would be enough to at least be a little bit closer. Where are you? What is your just personal, not medical? Where's your personal feelings?
From a personal standpoint, yes, I'm disappointed. I was hoping that there was a chance that he could return within the first 4 weeks. And even if he couldn't play the first couple games, hit the practice field and then be ready for week 3 or week 4. From a medical standpoint, obviously the team has to do what's best for Trey. And at this point, they don't think he's ready to be out there. So, when you're a fan and you're projecting injuries and how long it'll take for somebody to come back, you're just guessing. It's a complete guesswork with something like an ACL, because you'll see a guy like Godwin in Tampa, and he's back. He's been back in the practice field for almost a month now. He might miss the first game, and he tore his ACL after Trey White. So I think when you're doing a safe, conservative timeline, you're going to normally say, well, probably 10 months, 10 to 11 months. But that isn't always the case. And you're always, I guess, hoping for the best. Like when reports first were coming out during the offseason from fans speculating and doctors speculating with ACL injuries, they were saying, well, you're probably looking at late October. And based on doctors that deal with that stuff, yeah, for most people that would probably be the time frame that you would be saying. But professional athletes are different. You never know what they're capable of, and there's some guys that are just freaks that are able to defy the odds and come back much quicker than what your average person would. So even though the data was saying, yeah, you're probably looking mid-October, I was hoping that there was an outside chance that Trey would be one of those guys that was an exception, that wouldn't be the 10.5, 11-month recovery route. And to be honest, none of us really know where he's truly at. Has he had any setbacks? We wouldn't know. The Bills aren't telling us anything. Is he good to go and they're just trying to play it safe and give him some extra time? I don't believe that's the case, but entirely possible. What it comes across to me is that the Bills do not want to risk his health, his long-term health, to get him out there quicker than they need him to get out there. So, yes, personally, I'm a little bit disappointed from a personal fan perspective, but the team is doing what's in his best interest, and you just have to have faith that they know what they're doing, and Trey is aware of his body, and that in the end, this is the right decision to be made.
And that's one of the things I did from a personal perspective. I thought the Bills could, with the 5, I always point to the 5 inactives because it is for competitive balance. Everyone says it should be 53 active on game day plus a couple. But realistically, you can't have that. If you're not healthy, you're going in with 6, 7, 8 less players than a team that isn't. So it just, you need that. And on top of it, the owners who already feel like they've given enough of the pie, they're never going to allow more active roster spots. It's more money. That's more active game day checks. That's less practice. It's just not going to happen. But however, with that being said, you have to use these. You can use these inactive spots for stashes, like players like maybe a Hodgins or whoever to stash. You can use them for just straight up depth. Maybe it's not stashes, but guys that like you need. Bobby Hart would be a good example of this. Like we want him here to be ready to go if we need him ready in an emergency for game day. Also, you can use them for injuries. What's interesting to me is Trey White could have practiced. So to them, the Bills didn't want to expose. This is all this says to me. The Bills didn't want to expose McLeod and Cam Lewis to waivers. Otherwise, I do believe you have to. We just talked about on the show a little bit earlier. You have to have one inactive. The numbers don't work in your favor to play Benford and Neal and as well as Cam Lewis. Like you got to have one inactive, and it's not going to be Neal. I don't know who they're going to pick between Lewis and Benford. I have no idea how they'll position special teams to versatility to maybe a better boundary corner. I'm not sure how that'll all play out. But with if you would have put White on there, to me, it definitely signifies there was no chance he's ready in 4 weeks. Zero. Like there was no situation. Is that a setback? No. Was that the previous plan? Maybe not. But I don't believe there was ever a situation to where White was going to be ready at 4 week mark. And I just think he's too valuable of a player. This isn't Cam Lewis. He's too valuable of a player to not allow the inactive list to play itself out.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And you know what? Whatever the Bills' reasons for handling it the way they did, they obviously have their probably good reason and logic behind it. We will never know, to be honest with you. We're probably never going to hear what the main reasoning was behind everything. And I do think it's important to note that it was probably entirely possible that White could have been aiming for the start of the regular season during rehab, and it just didn't turn out to be that way. So I never want to close the door on something from happening until you know it can't happen. So I guess to wrap up the injury stuff, a lot of people are going to pat themselves on the back, and maybe correctly, maybe rightly so. Maybe I was just a little too enthusiastic, but in professional sports, I never want to limit something until I know I can't do something. And the fact that the Bills have him on PUP means that the right thing is to wait and be patient. And I'm going to trust the organization going forward.
Fair enough, Mike. I like the total output, and definitely with the season is here for fantasy, underdog fantasy. Get out there, try out different leagues, best ball leagues on underdog fantasy, where you don't have to set an active lineup, season-long leagues. They play your best team, you draft, you do all the fun parts, and then underdog does the rest with the best ball league, where they put your entire roster. They play your best lineup, so you don't have to worry about starts, scratches, who's playing against a bad defense, etc. Get out there, give Underdog Fantasy as a supplement to your fantasy leagues out there. One of the best and funnest platforms I'm on. Use promo code COVER1 and we'll match up to $100 of your deposit and play in any league that you feel comfortable with. Get out there and give Underdog a try. I think with all of this being said, it is one of the best rosters that I've covered. I covered the team live in person with credentials in 2000 and when they broke the drought in 2017. That was fun. But this roster, just in that short time, I remember being on the field actually when the Darby trade broke. I was there when Jordan Matthews showed up from the trade. That was pretty cool. But these rosters are just leaps and bounds better to the fact of people clutching onto the 53rd, 54th, 55th, 56th men on the roster. There is plenty of talent here that we're not even thinking is going to clear waivers. So that's ultimately, let's sum it all up by saying this roster is super talented. There's not a lot of holes. The depth at cornerback is still pretty good. I love the depth at cornerback, actually. I don't like the top end of corner, kind of unlike a couple positions. I think it's
you don't like the unknown of it.
Yeah, sure. I don't like the unknown of it. I don't know what it's going to turn out. We saw a little bit of it with Wallace and with, do you think Kaiir Elam's better than Wallace today? I do, because I wasn't a big Wallace fan.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can say either way with confidence.
Sure.
You're speculating, you're hoping, you're basing stuff off of what he did in college. I'd say today, if you had to make a bet, Wallace probably has a slight advantage because he has the experience in the NFL, but Kaiir Elam definitely has the higher upside. So you're going to have moments where Kaiir Elam is going to flash and he's going to make some remarkable plays, but is he going to get burnt on something that Wallace might have the recognition to detect? Entirely possible. How do you analyze who's the better player in that situation? If Kaiir Elam flashes 70%, but then he allows the one big play that Levi Wallace wouldn't have, then you're getting into arguments over what you prefer. But yeah, if you're asking me, would I rather have Levi Wallace or Kaiir Elam heading into the season? I'm going to take Kaiir Elam. There's a reason he's a first-round pick.
Yeah. And as we get into some game chat already, we're going to be coming at you next week with our official preview show of the Rams coming up in just 9 days. Please smash the like button, follow us on all of our platforms, but more importantly, smash that like button so that we can continue to deliver you amazing content. Continue to rate us 5 stars in Apple Podcasts. That would mean a lot to us all. And yeah, we're going to come at you with the Rams preview pretty hard next week. Now we're going to finally put it all together. All these hypotheticals. Who's the punter? We're going to know that. Who's going to be, is there any final tweaks? Do we have a corner on the practice squad ready to come up? There's going to be all types of answers that we're going to have next time we meet next week here on the Going Deep podcast. But I do believe some early taste of that, Mike. I do not believe this Rams offense is as good as they were last season. I do believe the Stafford injury will play a role into this a little bit. And there's definitely some limited options. I think the team struggled without OBJ in the Super Bowl once he went out. So I do think that there's going to be a really interesting, how healthy is Stafford? No one knows. It's going to be interesting after he takes a couple of real hits again, how this is all going to play out. So we're going to bring at you some live. Will I be on the show next week? We'll see. I'm not sure yet.
I'm praying, Kevin. It's going to be a Wednesday show. So
yes, Wednesday. We're going to be on Wednesday next week. We're switching with Ant and in his show to do Wednesday. So we're going to be one day before. So we're going to be your live preview show here at Cover One Podcast Network. We'll be bringing you with that live show. Ant will be Tuesdays at our slot to do his show. So that'll be just a little lineup change here for us next week. Could I be here? Potentially, but I'll be in the operating room the following day with our delivery of our child. So we'll see how that all plays out for me. But I know, Mike, I know you can handle it if you need to. I know you got it. I
like being the secondary guy.
Mike, sometimes it's next man up, Mike. Like, come on, you gotta trust the process.
I guess you gotta trust the process. Hopefully, everyone else watching trusts the process and trust that it'll turn out okay if that does happen. But either way, we're hoping you're here. But if you're not, good luck with everything.
Thank you.
With the delivery, and awesome news for another person coming into your family.
Yeah, the final group of 4 for us here today. We're actually celebrating Tommy's 4th birthday as well here today. So everything's happening all at once.
Birthday tomorrow for me.
Oh, wow. So, look at that. Birthday for you tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, you're vacationing. You're going to your 80th already college football game of the season.
Yeah, the amount of football games this year is just wild. I've seen the CFL.
Syracuse season tickets.
Bills season tickets. I think we're planning on adding 2 or 3 UB games in there. And also seeing Ohio Penn State next week. And there's already been one Hamilton Tiger Cats CFL game, and there's an open weekend where we might get a BC Lions Toronto Argonauts because former Ohio University quarterback Nathan Rourke tearing up the CFL right now, so we might fit that in too. So
yeah, and I tried to not make it this day. It's unfortunately out of our control. Amanda even tried to push it up a couple of days to make sure, but sometimes it just kind of is. I told Mike, I was like, any other year for the opening day kickoff would have been preferred. We got it this year, and then we got it matched up with our scheduled date. So that's just, I'm going to be watching the game on my exclusive, sweet 18-inch 4K in a corner TV. So I'll be peeled to whatever's going on in my hospital room as well as on the TVs. But hopefully we're going to be bringing you really great action all week long next week on the Cover One Podcast Network. Mike will either be holding it down or he'll be here with me. Either way, we'll bring it at you. But we really appreciate everybody tuning into the roster special. And Mike, you already got a lot of motivation. You got people that say that you can do it.
I should have more confidence than what I truly do have hosting. Yeah. And it goes back to, like, everybody knows I used to be a sports anchor. I did radio. But you want to know, throughout my 5-year TV career and the 3 years I did TV and radio in college, and in addition to that, I have never, outside of like my solo UB basketball stuff, I have never hosted myself. I've always been the number 2 or the color guy, or obviously on TV, I'm anchoring myself, but like radio and podcasts, I'm never the main guy, but we'll see. I think it's going to turn out okay. I trust myself enough, I guess.
There you have it. So we really appreciate everybody tuning into this game day roster edition, 9 days away from kickoff, giving you our potential projection of our inactives. We've gone through the roster inside and out, broken it down, kind of matched to our predictions. But next week is real football. We'll be at you. The opening NFL season runs through LA, runs through the Bills. Will the Bills make a statement to show of where they picked up, where they left off in those playoffs, and continue to finish the job? Or the Rams will continue to show, yes, we were the 4. Yes, we were not the best team in the NFC throughout most of the year, but we did finish the job, like unlike everybody else. So what one will play itself out? I do believe the Bills have the edge with Von Miller, no pun intended, to get over the hump and to be the difference that swings the pendulum in the Bills' favor. So we're really interested to see, and we'll be bringing right at you with the game day edition live preview show next Wednesday here on the Cover One Podcast Network. But we're going to get out of here. We're going to pass it on over to Eric and the film room crew. They got a cool Khalil Shakir video coming out at you here now, as well as we're really excited to see what they have to say in the film room. So make sure you stay right here and you dive into the film room with us and the Cover One Podcast Network. We'll catch you next week for a live NFL preview show. Catch you all soon.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One Network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen